Awesome. Hello everyone. Welcome to CocoaHeads 188. Thank you for coming. In the spirit of reconciliation, Melbourne CocoaHeads acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. We have an awesome lineup tonight. We're going to, I didn't pick the time when TC would come up and say stuff. But at some point TC will come up and say stuff, and then we'll get into the three presentations. Aaron Vernon from Split Atom Labs, is that it? Good. I actually don't know what he's talking about, but I assume he's talking about his game Land of Livia. But yeah. Then next up we've got Andrew Murphy. Title still correct? Yep. Close enough. Yep. 9 management habits quietly burning out your best engineers, or yourself maybe. Take it on board. And Renaud. Oh, I did it wrong. Renaud the grid. Okay, awesome. Code of conduct here. The main thing is to make people feel welcome and inclusive. If you see anyone being harassed or bullied or made to feel uncomfortable, come speak to either myself or Bok or Baz or someone that looks like they can help. Or there's the anonymous form at melbournecocoaheads.com. It's on that site, yeah. Code-of-conduct. Great. Housekeeping. If you need to go to the bathroom, out the door to your right, past the elevators, and if we all need to exit quickly during an emergency, same way, just near the toilets. It hasn't happened before, but you never know. Great. Questions. During the presentations, there's an online audience as well. So am I forgetting something? No, great. There's an online audience, so we generally keep questions till the end of the presentation. But if the presenter says like, hey, if they ask you a question, it's okay to answer them. But we'll go around with microphones and stuff, and awesome. If you're online, go to the Slack channel, #Melbourne Meetup, and post your questions there or on YouTube. Thank you to our sponsors, our gold sponsor, Manta Group. Awesome. We couldn't do these events without you, and thank you as well to REA Group, our silver sponsor. Thank you very much. Some other events on this month. Coding Night, Wednesday the 20th of August. It's just it's a night we do with Google and the Flutter Group and someone else, and just bring your laptop. Is it? I don't know.
Some web people too.
Web, yeah, okay, great, wonderful. That's right. Yes, we're doing that. And there is Amy's, it's a special month this month, right? Do I get a microphone? I think we should get a microphone. Oh, you're going to do it from the audience. You can come up. I feel like you can come up.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, great. Oh, okay. I got my slide. Okay, great. Jump in the main spot.
Cool. So one of the things that Revenue CAD is running, Revenue CAD is running this year again after the success of last year is Shippathon, which is a worldwide sort of hacking coding event designed to encourage people to release new apps to the App Store or out into the wild. And they're doing a bunch of in-person events, one of which is going to be part of the coding night next week. So if you've got an app idea you're wanting to release soon, or you've already signed up to Shippathon or anything like that, just come along, or just come along anyway. There will be a bunch of swag. It is going to be a lot of fun. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. Great. Cool. There's also the social night, Tuesday the 26th of August. Ooh, Brick Lane Brewery, but normally yep, great. And then, not quite a CocoaHeads event, but I thought I'd call it out, which is DevWorld. So that's on the 4th and 5th of September. We've got some speakers there, a few familiar faces. Are you up there? Yeah.
Did you do
Okay.
the slide or did you not do this slide?
I did the slide, but I didn't confirm that you were on it. I just took the speakers from the website. I'll get through this stuff. Other groups. Oh, everyone's got that web address down? Buy tickets, great. Awesome. Other groups, SydneyCocoaHeads.com, GDG Melbourne. We sort of help support them. They help support us. You can get a list of all the CocoaHeads communities around Australia and New Zealand at aunz.cocoaheads.social. How to find us specifically, go to melbournecocoaheads.com or jump on the Slack as well, which you'll get access to on the CocoaHeads website. Yep. And Mastodon. So I'm not quite on there, but someone is. Jump on Slack though. As I said before, Melbourne Meetup is the one for tonight specifically. If you want to help with the events, go to Melbourne Volunteers. If you're looking for work or looking for people to work, go to #jobs okay, yep. And if you want to be a speaker or if you want to suggest a speaker you want to see, go to #speakers. Now, I'm going to throw it over to TC to give us, yeah, I think so. Now's the time. Now is the time. Everyone put your hands up. I don't even know how to introduce you. You have to introduce yourself.
Just did.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, my name is TC. I work at Apple, and tonight I'm part of the developer relations team who have decided to infiltrate your meeting. So from the same team we have, especially for an event, which I will explain a little bit in a minute, we have Joanna, who has flown in from Apple Shanghai, and of course Gavin Condon, who you would already know, who is my partner in crime here in, well, Sydney, but we spend a lot of time here too. So the main reason we are in town is we've been running workshops around Sydney and here for developers that are working on Liquid Glass and the Apple Foundation models. So you would have seen this advertised on developerapple.com, and it's one of our in-person events. We hope to do a lot more in-person events in addition to the online events that have been running as well. Now, I'm not going to take up much more of your time. We have some amazing speakers tonight. Big shout out to Aaron, who is our Apple Design Award finalist this year and joined us at WWDC 25. It's a real privilege to have him speak with you. I've heard some of the speech when he joined us at CocoaHeads in Sydney. I think you enjoyed very much. Now also, since Joanna is in town, I have asked, and she has actually offered, to take any questions that you might have afterwards in regards to AI ML, and I'm going to throw this mic to her shortly about other topics that she'll be happy to take your questions on. Take advantage of it. We're here. We're happy to answer your questions. So with Joanna, do we have an extra mic for?
Hello everyone, a little bit nervous. My name is Joanna Zhang and visiting from our DR team in China. So actually it's my first time in Australia and in Melbourne. So really excited. And in the past 2 weeks, actually we spent hundreds of times with the developers and to like ideation about the foundation model and those AI solutions and really many like good adoptions already there. So really excited about that. And also in Apple, I cover like the AI and machine learning, and also like Apple Watch, health and fitness, and also accessibility. So if you are like interested in any of the topic, or maybe you are curious about the Chinese market trends, just feel free to come talk. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Joanna. That's it from us. So let's talk more afterwards, right? Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, TC. All right, now I don't have much more to say, so I'm going to throw it across to Aaron Vernon to talk about his game Land of Livia. I should probably mention you're an Apple Design Awards finalist in the inclusivity
category. That's
category.
correct. Yes.
So yes, you can take it from here, I think. Thank you, Aaron.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Melbourne CocoaHeads, for the invitation. I mean, I think I've been doing podcasts and interviews every other week for the last 3 months. But this is the first event I think I've done in person since like before COVID. So let's get ready for those like 2019 vibes, I think. So I thought I'd start with just giving a little bit of an overview of my journey to kind of get the basics out of the way. Then we can kind of go to questions, which is usually where the most fun is anyway. So I'm Aaron Vernon. I'm the co-founder of Split Atom Labs, and we created a inclusive mobile game called Land of Livia. As Pat just said, it was an Apple Design Award finalist for 2025 in the category of inclusivity. So this all started back in 2014. I was living in New York and I was between jobs. Actually, I'd just come out of a failed startup and I had a few months left on my lease and I was wondering what I should do with my time. I'd been involved in, been a big gamer since I was very young and on and off in the games industry, and I figured, I'm just gonna build a game. Build a game that I want to exist in the world, not necessarily one that I thought would be commercially successful or tick a lot of boxes for publishers. I am a big World of Warcraft, well, I was a big World of Warcraft player, recovering addict I think is the right way to phrase it, and love RPGs. And I wanted a game that you could play throughout your day to get that little bit of excitement from finishing a quest, unlocking a little bit of a narrative, and continuing on with the rest of your day. So a game for busy people, a game that didn't exploit your time, a game that didn't have the predatory monetization that was rife across the industry and still is to this day. So I spent 2 weeks, I built a prototype, got some feedback from friends and family, and it was clear that there was something there. And so I just kept building it. I didn't kind of give up on it. I just kept on the side, working on it. And then in 2016, I launched it. But it wasn't until 2018 that things took a really interesting turn because I started to get reach outs from people who were blind or low vision and were part of the online community called AppleViz, which some of you might know is a very great resource for accessibility, developers to get accessibility feedback on their experiences. And they said, your app is almost accessible. We can play like a lot of it. Here are some tips on how to make it more accessible. And so it started off, I would fix bugs, like you would any kind of bugs that came in. But when I fixed these, the result would be I would get heartfelt messages saying how I changed individuals' lives. And this really hit me hard and kind of, it caused me to become addicted to learning more about what is the experience of these people in their day-to-day lives, what is their experience with games, and how can I make it better? And so at that point in time, the game kind of spread a little bit like wildfire through the accessibility community. But I wasn't, and I knew this was something that I wanted to pursue and kind of turn into a company, but I wasn't quite ready yet. And so over the course of 2018 through to 2023, I was continuing to build it on the side, maintain it, learn more about accessibility, continue to improve it, but I was still working a day job. I spent, actually at that time I'd moved back to New York again. I was growing the New York office of Two Bulls, which is a Melbourne-based digital studio, some of you might be familiar with. And then I joined Meta as an engineering manager where I worked for 4 years, the first 3 of which I was building, improving Facebook for businesses and creators, and then I moved on to the Reality Labs side of things and was the lead of AR gaming for the upcoming Orion headset. If you see Zuck playing the game, the Pong game, that was my team that built that game. But then the layoffs came in New York, across the US in tech, and I'm sure that many were affected here as well in Australia. Waking up to the news that like 11,000 people had been laid off from Meta, and all of a sudden half my team was like Thanos clicked out of existence. It was quite challenging time, and then there were secondary and a third round of layoffs as well. And I figured at that time, this is it. I don't really want to like live with the stress anymore of like not knowing if I'm going to need to leave the country quickly with my young family because I lose my job suddenly. So I realized it was time. It was time to move back to Australia and start Split Atom Labs with a mission to create a more inclusive future for mobile gaming. And so I was lucky enough to convince one of my colleagues at Meta to come along with me on this journey as my co-founder. His name's Matthew. He still lives over in New York. And we spent a year, well, about 8 months actually, trying to go the raise money route. Like, we're ex-Meta engineers. We have this brand behind us. We have a game with a little bit of traction. Let's go try to raise money. And so we met with all the kind of typical VCs and gaming VCs, and time after time we're told that the market's not big enough, this is not impactful enough, you're not going to be able to do this. We don't believe it's possible to make a game that is inclusive to a broad range of people like this. Things changed a little bit when I was accepted into the Access to Success Accelerator, which is a program based out of Canada. It's a program specifically for disability-focused startups. We learned a lot from that. We learned a lot about people who had pushed through the barriers of being told the market's not big enough and came out the other side with a successful business. So we knew it was possible. And so then we stopped chasing approval of others, stopped trying to chase investment, and we just built. We built really hard for 5-6 months, and we relaunched Land of Livia with even more accessibility features for even more people. And then we partnered with some creators in that community to kind of get the word out there. And then I called up my old friend TC and said, hey, I've got this game you might be interested in, and walked him through what it was, where it was, and the impact it was having on people's lives. Shared some of the feedback we'd gotten from that community. And then, of course, I was lucky enough to be nominated for the Apple Design Award finalist, and which was an amazing opportunity. And then now we're kind of continuing to build this out and try to prove all those people wrong that we can build a successful and sustainable business out of building games for people that don't have other ways to play. I probably missed some things in there in the journey, but that's pretty much the gist of it. So yeah, I'll switch over to some questions.
Grab a seat.
Okay, green light. Thank you again, Aaron,
Of course.
for coming, sharing that with us. You mentioned the Apple Design Awards.
Yes.
Now, are you able to share a bit more insight apart from the fact that you call up TC and like, is there more to the process?
Of course, yes. So, I'm sure everyone's kind of out there chasing that feature, chasing that big moment. Firstly, the thing to note is that that will not make or break your business. Your business needs to find its audience, find its market without the help of an external entity. That will amplify it. It will amplify the success you might already be having. It might accelerate some things, but it's not the be all and end all. So first of all, focusing on our market and how we could grow our impact, that was always our number one priority. And so we were listening to feedback from our beta testers, from our community, and continuing to build for them. But outside of that, we knew we had a distribution problem. Because these people in our community often don't think that they can play games. They're very scattered. There's not an easy way to find them right now in kind of one location. You can't market them like gamers because they're not gamers today. They don't even know they can be gamers. So you need to kind of think about how you're going to grow this new market. And one way that we knew would be helpful is if we had a company like Apple that could kind of get behind it and amplify it. So we really thought about what are the Apple technologies that we can showcase and present it in a really great way, and went about basically features like dynamic type that we rewrote the whole application in Swift UI to integrate that in. We support up to the largest accessibility font size in a game, which I think is I don't think there's any other game in the world that does that. And then obviously we had great voiceover support, but we also integrated in Siri app intents as a really quick way for people to have low cognitive ways to engage with the game. And so really hitting on those notes of what we thought Apple would care about was a key part of our strategy. But we also didn't bet everything on the fact that this was the route that we were going.
Nice. I think one of the things that I noticed online is people were amazed that they were enjoying the game, or that it was, playable. Like a lot of people that maybe had lost their sight over time were like, I used to game. And it was very, I guess, uplifting to hear people talk and actually tell their experience. They're like, oh, this is a game that I can play. You mentioned the feedback from users. Have you got examples that you can share, or at least some early examples that really made you think, oh, this is something we really need to follow and pursue?
Of course. So the most prominent one recently actually was a guy who, he jumps into our Discord, blind tribal chief, and he says, hey, I went blind 5 years ago and I thought I would never game again. This is the first time I've been able to game. I used to play, Final Fantasy and all these other sorts of experiences. And he wrote this big long message thanking me for providing this experience and really listening to the community's feedback and trying to build the best experience possible. That in itself would have been, an amazing experience and great. But fast forward a few months later, he reaches out again and he says, now I've actually met someone through the social systems in your game. And it's another blind person. We live in different countries, and we've now decided that she is going to move from the UK to the US, or maybe the other way around, and we're going to move in together. I found a relationship thanks to your game. And this is just like a random Tuesday. I just get this message come in, and it's like, wow, that's real impact.
The social stuff was something that I was surprised to see in the game, just because when I heard a text-based RPG. Mm-hmm. I wasn't expecting sort of how much impact that had on the community, and just it's probably better for you to share what is the campfire thing.
Yeah.
I read about and just what it is, and the thing that it reminded me of was just, you mentioned you were influenced by World of Warcraft, right?
Yep.
And for me, that massively multiplier, that experience of community and working together.
Yep.
To see that in your game was, pretty cool.
Absolutely. So, because that was one of my influences, I think, as like a socially awkward developer, I got a lot out of online communities and games. It was a way to kind of connect with people and get a bit of a deeper experience. But I really, when I built the first version, I thought, what is the simplest version of that? What is the lowest friction way that we can have social interaction that doesn't add any pressure onto the individuals? And what I came up with at the time was to keep it very small and randomly group a set of people together into a campfire. And I think for most of the existence of Land of Livia, these campfires have maybe been under 100 people big. And nobody knows how many campfires there are. The campfires are not advertised. People can find out, obviously, through direct means. But it creates these kind of small communities that organically grow. And then you layer into that the fact that 30% of those people are blind or low vision, and they're communicating their experiences to mainstream gamers that are also in the campfire, and it's created something that's really kind of quite special. But funny enough, like the version of the campfire that we have today is almost exactly the same version from the first release of the game. Even though it's been one of the most popular features, it's not something that I've invested more into yet, because as many of you know, it's complicated stuff to do a lot of like back-end and real-time interaction, so I wanted to keep it super simple. But now that we've kind of scaled up a bit, it's very clear that there's a desire for us to build out that campfire and make it into more of that kind of community, more of that MMO style of game. A pattern that we've seen is super interesting is that you'll go into a campfire and there'll be people coming back in there daily to chat, to talk about the other games they're playing. They're not playing my game, they're just coming back to chat. And I thought wow, that's really, we've got to capture that intent and do more with it.
And you mentioned there's 30% people that are blind or low vision.
Mm-hmm.
How do you balance the mechanics of the game or the experience of the game between people that have varying accessibility needs and still making it fun and sort of an enjoyable game?
Yeah, so I think there's two aspects of that. One is basically the core of inclusive design, is that in order to design inclusively, you really need to understand where each player is at from a impairment, ability, and engagement perspective, and then offer different ways to engage with the experience. Some of them might be well suited to some people, but some others better to other people. And to really like listen into like what is their individual experience like. I think when you start making assumptions about how someone would interact with your software, when you're talking about accessibility, you've already made a massive mistake. Accessibility and disability, it's a many layered concept in that like you're not really building just for one impairment. Sometimes people have many different impairments that interact in interesting ways. And so we're always thinking about, okay, well, if someone has a difficulty seeing, here are some ways that we can make it easier for them to understand the information that they're dealing with. If someone gets overwhelmed easily, has low cognitive load, how can we make it easier for them? So that's the inclusive design perspective. The other angle of it is how do you make it fun? That's actually that's just game design 101, because really what game design is how do we introduce enough friction such that when the person overcomes that friction, they get a dopamine release. That's the core concept of how you design a game, and it's all about if you get too much frustration, people hate your game, they review bomb it. Too little frustration, it's bored, they put it down. So you need to give them just enough resistance to make it engaging and get them hooked and want to come back for more. And so we're really just solving the same problem that any game would need to do. We're just solving it through like multiple lenses at the same time.
And one of your philosophies as well was not to make it too addictive, right?
Yes, absolutely. So we definitely don't want too much kind of engagement time. Something that's really interesting about the game right now is that it's played in 5-minute sessions, and on average, someone will play it 6 times throughout the day, which is very different to a lot of other games, right, where people sit down for 2-hour sessions, 3-hour sessions. We've gotten a lot of feedback that people want more engagement. So we want to push that 5 minutes maybe to like 10 or 15 minutes, but I think that's where we would cap it out, and we would kind of be adding natural limits and ways to prevent people from playing too much.
Nice. I don't want to take up all the time, right? How much time have I got to work with? So I definitely have to ask about the live activities.
Live activities.
Yeah, is that in the pipeline, or sorry, bad question. Can I preface it by asking about AI and sort of like what other features you're potentially bringing into the app?
Yeah, so the AI features, the assistive features that we add they've really taken off like lightning. We've added the ability to basically use an app intent to say, hey Siri, what should I do in Land of Livia? And it'll pop up a sheet and it'll say the one thing that you need to do in order to progress in this game. And I expected that would be used by maybe a few people, but now the majority of people playing the game, even veterans of the game, that's the way they play the game, because it's really just like, once again, streamlined that experience. And we have features like sell junk, sells that automatically your items. Many games have that, but we think we kind of go a little bit extra in like how we're thinking about the logic to make it a little safer to use for people. Auto equip similarly, like rather than messing around with inventory. Who wants to do that? That's not fun. That doesn't give you dopamine. Just one button, done. So we keep doing features like that and streamlining the game, and every time we do, people enjoy that. And I think that like AI is going to allow us to push it even further. But once again, it's like, what's that balance? Too much assistance, you might get rid of that fun. So definitely, more to come on, we're excited about Apple Intelligence, excited about foundation models. I think there's a lot that we could do with them. And I think even more when we start to think about like what game comes next after Land of Livia, how do we go beyond text-based RPG? That's really exciting to think about. How do we take all these lessons we've learned and apply it to a more interactive game?
Awesome. I will ask quickly about the Android side of things.
Oh, the live activities, did you want me to answer that
one? Yeah, I didn't want to push the live activities. But,
I mean, so we're going to introduce the tab view accessory for the current activity. I think that's a no-brainer. And then taking that one step further, the live activity would be quite interesting. I think when I talk about not overwhelming the player, I don't think it's the kind of game where you'd want to see a timer as a live activity for 4 hours. And so actually I was talking to TC last night about this, is like, what if in the last 5 minutes of your quest, that's when you get the live activity? So that's when you're like, oh, crap, I need to finish this call with my girlfriend so I can go play this game because my quest is about to finish in 5 minutes. That might be more attuned to what would work with our players. But even then, I think that this might be something that we beta test first and see what the feedback's like.
That's pretty cool. The Android thing,
Yep.
which is, it's in the pipeline. I don't know officially. I couldn't find the official word, but
You
So
just found a lot of people asking for it,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So it's entirely native. I've for all of my career, I think most things that I've built have been entirely native. The only time it hasn't been is when I've been using like a game engine like Unity, and we specifically do not use Unity because we do not think we can get the level of accessibility polish that we want. So it's all native, which means porting to Android, as you all know, is a very big effort. But there's also very clear demand for it. So I'm kind of exploring, actually I was talking to Andy here just before about, can I compile down like the model layer and the logic layer into like a Swift package that could run on Android and then use Compose over the top. I know there's Compose UI stuff that goes the other way, but the bottom line is like I'm gonna have to write a lot of net new code, and I'm not in a position, I don't think at the moment, where I can balance all the business like stuff, the iOS stuff, and do an Android build. So I think it's something that we're probably gonna need to get some level of funding for, and we just need to figure out like how are we gonna make that happen. But the good news is we've got people asking for it, so that's a very good signal to have.
Okay. I'm going to throw it over the audience very quickly, but I just wanted to ask the quick question about how this whole game has changed you as a developer and as well as a storyteller, because I feel like story is a big part of this game.
Yeah.
And just how the accessibility approach has changed how you tell a story.
Yeah, great question. I think I was a storyteller before I was a developer, actually. And I think that I used to talk with my creative director partner over in New York and say, I actually think that the one true human skill is storytelling. It's what we were doing around the campfires in primitive times. And I think even now, even with the rise of AI, the way a human crafts a story is still really important. And it's the way that we connect with other people. It's the way that we share information and impact. So I think that it's just really reinforced that fact that like that's so important. I think that as a developer now, what it's changed most is I think marketing first about everything. But not marketing in like the I guess the dirty sense of a word that a developer might think about. I think about like who are we building this for and why? Like what problems do they have? And why do they have those problems? And how can I reach them? They're the questions that keep me up at night and where I focus most of my time, even though I would love to be like developing nonstop every day.
Awesome. All right, that was enjoyable. That was great. Now we can ask the audience questions. Okay, I'll go up there. Thank you very much.
Of course.
Okay, yeah, great. Thank you. I'll just sit here.
What would you say was your most successful way of getting new users? Was it marketing outreach? Was it word of mouth in a community? Or was it an Apple promotion? Something like that?
Great question. We haven't found the true scalable channel yet. We've tried a lot of different things. I think the most successful thing that we've had has been creators. And so we reached out to a bunch of different creators. We identified all the top blind and low vision creators. We paid one of them to do a partnered content with us. She has 2 million followers, so quite large. But that actually ended up not being the most successful campaign. It was just some other person that like happened to do it for free and then caused like the biggest spike that we had. So I think definitely creators are a great way to reach the audience. We are also obviously from our time at Meta quite adept with like meta ads. So that's the most scalable method we have. But then it can be kind of a little fraught with danger in terms of like the algorithm changes and all of a sudden you're losing money.
Hey, g'day there. Just wanted to say congrats because it's really cool to see more inclusive design in games, which is not a typical space to see this in.
Thank you.
I'm an Android user and an engineer, I guess, but like, I guess a lot of apps come with a bunch of accessibility features like dynamic type support, but what is something you think that is achievable for other apps that your app does compared to them?
In terms of like how can people make their apps more accessible?
Yeah, or they should just be doing as like I guess like as a starting point for their app design and things.
I mean, I think screen reader support is pretty straightforward on both Android and iOS. I don't think there's much excuse for people to not do it. I think dynamic type does get tricky with design and layout and everything. But I would actually take a step back from the question and say that the most important thing is that people should be recognizing that people with disabilities are their customers. They are their customers, and they should proactively reach out and try to engage with them and learn more about how do they interact with their products. That's my advice to most people that I would talk to, is like, that's where to start. Engage with those users directly, because that's where you'll get the most learnings. And then you might find the low-hanging fruit. And it might take you half a day, and you could change the lives of 10,000 people.
Aaron, again, congrats on the huge success. I was wondering if there were any situations where there was a tension between making a particular feature or gameplay element more accessible versus more fun, and how you may have resolved that.
Yeah, I mean, there certainly is, but I don't think, I still don't think that it's really an accessibility exclusive kind of decision that we were making at that point in time. It was more, you know, what level, what type of gamer are we looking at? Are we looking at someone who's trying to min-max their equipment? Are we looking at someone that, you know, really has never played a game before? They're the decisions that cause us more stress. I think a lot of our early adopters are those min-maxers, and we know that's not going to be the vast majority of users that we will get. And so, you know, some of the features that they request, like, you know, being able to we have the auto equip, right? And it'll prioritize certain stats. We make the decisions on that. They want like a drop down, like I want to prioritize this different secondary stat. We don't want to add that, because that's like more UI complexity. It's more cognitive complexity for someone to understand those systems. So in that sense, like, we can repeatedly say no to that. In terms of fun, yeah, I mean, we have this like gem mini game, which, you know, you have these circle arcs that kind of rotate. You tap a button to cut, and then like the segments need to line up. And like, I built this many, many years ago, and I just still haven't got the accessibility quite right. Like, I'm still not happy with it. I'm still going to rewrite it in the next few weeks to try and, you know, really nail the accessibility of it, such that everyone feels like they've got an equitable position to play the game.
There was a question that went out that I'll just repeat for someone. That was, has anyone speedrun your game? Say, that was you that asked that, right? Yep.
So yeah, this is an interesting one, right? So you know, you can change clocks to, you know, bypass timers. I sync with like NTP servers so that I know when someone's doing this, and I record it. I used to block them, and then I realized that person's having fun. That's how they want to play. Why should I block this person from experiencing the game that they want to experience it that way? So I no longer block it. I will send them sometimes like a message saying like, hey, you've been blocked for the leaderboards, because leaderboards are public. I don't mind how you play. I have no judgment, but just letting you know that's happened. But I think then more it speaks to the desire for people to have more gameplay, more engagement. And so I just use that as like a signal of like, you know, people want more. So speedrun, yes, but I think more so what they will do is they try to grind out like the max level of items. So like, you know, we drop like max level 50, we have like a bell curve distribution, and people like min-max all their secondary stats to try and push up this level so that maybe occasionally they get level 57 item by accident. And they compete on this, and they've been doing it for months. And it's like not something that I like have designed into the game. They just have found that they want to do it.
I did see people actually post the
Oh, you did?
yeah. And then you say, oh, I've sent you a message. That's awesome. All right, I've done okay. Okay, great. Thank you. That's it, right? Sorry that I'm not ending this well, but that was awesome. Thank you very much, Aaron.
Thank you so much.
That was great. That was cool.
Hello. I normally start these things with a little bit of a story. And this story is a story of how I almost died once, which is not always a fun way to start a talk. I was about 22, 23 years old. I was the software engineering manager at a small startup in the UK. I had a team of about 10 people. We'd just been bought by our largest client, because our largest client realized that their entire business relied on 10 idiots in a warehouse. And so they bought us. And this was not a software development company, this was a textile manufacturer. And the owner of the textile manufacturer was a dude in his 60s who had no idea about software development. And he put the software developers next to all the call center staff at the textile place, banned headphones, and required that we all go to work in suits and ties. My team did not take that well. I did not take that well. I didn't take it so well that actually, one day I was driving down the highway to work, and a truck came past me really fast. And as the truck came past me, it looked to me like my windscreen had shattered in front of me. I freaked out. I pulled over to the side of the road, and I had a full-on panic attack. Went to speak to the doctor the day afterwards, and I found out that the windscreen had not shattered. I'd had what was called an ocular migraine. Has anybody heard of those? Yeah, they're not good. Don't have one if you can avoid it. It pretty much looks like shattered glass, which was why I thought my windscreen had shattered. The stress that had built up in me for weeks and weeks up to this point had just culminated as that truck went past and just snapped me emotionally. And this was a sign for me to quit that job. But it stuck with me that I didn't even see that coming. I didn't know that I was burnt out. I didn't know that I was stressed. It just all appeared in that one moment. And so this is why this topic has been important to me for the past 15 years, is because I had that experience, and I know it's not uncommon in our industry. There's a lot of things in our industry which cause burnout and cause people to be stressed and really cause big issues. A good friend of mine recently left the industry because she just couldn't cope with the stress. She's literally stacking shelves in Coles, and she's an excellent software engineer. So this is why this topic is important to me. Sorry, not a fun story, but hopefully tells you why I'm talking about this. So we're going to talk a little bit about what is burnout, what the 9 habits are that I've identified are kind of pretty common in the industry. I'm going to hopefully give you some tips of how to work around them, and then we'll do some Q&A at the end if we've got time. If you're wondering who I am, if you've not seen me do a CocoaHeads talk before, I'm Andrew Murphy. I've been in Australia about 10 years, love travel, love getting around the world. My one regret in the world is leaving that Land Rover in the UK when I came. I loved that car so much. It was the only vehicle I've ever had. I'm not a car person, genuinely not a car person, but it's the only vehicle I've ever had that made me smile walking past it. Not even getting in it, not even driving it, just knowing I owned it made me happy. So it's my one regret moving here. But since then, I've inherited a flock of chickens and inherited a flock of humans. So I'm slowly replacing the Land Rover, but I do miss it deeply. From a professional point of view, I've been writing code since before high school. My dad taught me how to write code. I had a cool dad. He taught me to code on a ZX Spectrum, which I don't think really made it to Australia, kind of the UK's equivalent to the Commodore 64. I've also been in tech leadership a long time. Interestingly enough, Aaron, after you left Tubles, yes. I was the director of engineering at Tubles. So Weird connection. So yeah, I've worked in the tech industry a long time, but I've also been teaching technology leadership skills for a long time because it's important to me that we uplift the tech leadership in our industry. A lot of us go home Friday a software engineer and turn up to work on Monday a tech lead. And nothing has happened in the middle of those. And this is a problem we have in our industry. We need to support people making this transition more. Does anybody know what the average amount of time from somebody being promoted into a leadership position to being given any training at all on how to be a leader? What that average time is? 5 years. 5 years? More. 10 years. 10 years. 10 years. 10 years to fuck up somebody else's career. Think about it like that. Sorry, Pat, I put this slide. Every time I do a talk here, I see the slide at the beginning. I go, yeah, that's not me. I don't like standing up here and talking at you for 30 minutes. It's more fun for me if we have a conversation, we have a talk. So I'm going to be asking you questions. And yeah, we'll either pass the mic around. If it's a quick answer, then I'll just repeat it. We'll deal with it in a moment. Okay, so here's the first one. I've used this term burnout in the title of the talk, in my story in the beginning. When I say that word burnout, what does that mean to you? Like if we were to look at a dictionary and look under B for burnout, what would that word, the definition of that word be? You hate your job. Yeah, definitely. Anybody else? No motivation. That can definitely be the case. The salaryman's depression. Yeah. Well, you get paid. I just do it for free. Anybody else? Blank mind. Yeah. Look at a screen, it's like nothing comes to mind. He's just staring. Yeah. Yeah. Has anybody had that? They're just like staring at their code editor or a chart or like an Excel spreadsheet in my case sometimes. And you just like, I don't know what the hell is going on here. And my brain just is, it's in neutral.
Yes, we all use Xcode.
I forgot to tell, I was going to tell a story in the beginning and I forgot. So I've done how many talks at CocoaHeads now? Like
I think this is 4
or 5? It was, this is the first time I'm doing a CocoaHeads talk and I've actually written production Swift code. Woo! So I've been an imposter up until this point. Sorry. So yeah, anybody else burnout? For me, it's this sense of you just don't know what to do. Your decision-making systems have broken down. Everything feels 1,000 times harder than it should be. Everything feels 1,000 times stronger than it should be. Or, if you hit the other side of burnout, 1,000 times less strong. People tend to go to either end of the spectrum with this. They either get extremely overstimulated or they go so far beyond that it wraps around and they become numb. And that's the worst possible place, when you stop caring about it and you just go numb. So this happens so much. And I think that if you take one thing away from this talk, the one thing I want you to take away is that it's not often caused by one thing. We've all had those crunch times. We've all had the times when we've had to write a bazillion lines of code in a week to meet a deadline. But it's not that one thing that causes burnout. It's a combination of little persistent things that all build up. And 99% of those persistent things are bad management habits. They're things that managers don't even know they're doing. They're things that team leads, engineering directors, CTOs are just building into their culture without realizing the cumulative effect of them. Because every single one of them is small, but it's this consistent eroding of motivation, well-being, and performance that causes burnout. It's very rarely a one-time thing. So I'm going to go through 9 of those. We're going to talk about them. If you've got a story you want to share, please share a story. This is as much catharsis for you of getting the bad jujus out and talking about it. So please feel free to kind of share a story if you have one. So my first one, which I'm sure nobody here has ever experienced, is equating busyness with value. And what I mean by that is if they're working hard, it means they're adding value. I see this all the time. That team has got their head down writing code, they're doing good work. No, those two things are not the same. There is not a correlation between busyness and adding value. You can be really, really busy and not add value, or you can only do a little small thing and add a huge amount of value. And I think one of the bad management habits is to not realize that actually we've sometimes got to step back and understand the problem deeper. So we know this, that if we're working on something and we've only got a surface level understanding because we're jumping around all the time, then we're not adding deep value to what we're doing. We're not really understanding it, and we're not able to make these really informed decisions. One of the interesting consequences of that is you actually end up with lots of engineers only having a surface level and no one person or no small group of people having a deep understanding of it. And so you get this critical knowledge just dissipates from your team because nobody is focused on something deeply and understanding it deeply. So my tip here is try and measure the things that actually matter. Sounds obvious, not so obvious. We were talking earlier, somebody was saying that don't measure lines of code or don't measure code coverage on unit tests. Those things are not important. They're not the things that actually add value. I worked at a large Australian social media company, and after I left, they took on a new CTO, and that new CTO decided that the metric for people's performance reviews was number of PRs committed in a quarter. Not even joking. You can bet that, let's just change our linting rules a little bit. Oh, look, a bunch of PRs. So, all of these things can just be gamed and they're completely irrelevant. Find the ways in which your engineers can talk about the impact they make. So one of the things I do a lot in teams is we have, we often have like Friday showcases or end of sprint showcases. Often they talk about the features they've built. What I try and encourage people to do is to talk about the impact they made. And so, who did they build this feature for? What can Jessica do now that Jessica couldn't do last week? What can Jonathan do with our software that Jonathan couldn't do before this sprint? Let's talk about the people and the impact, not just the features we're building. And I think talking about that kind of stuff helps move the concentration away from building the feature to what's the actual value and impact we're adding. My next one, and this is especially true for if you're a leader yourself, is failing to set, respect, and model healthy boundaries. Now, we definitely kind of understand, setting and respecting boundaries, but I think if you've ever worked in a leadership role, it's so easy to go, oh yeah, but those rules don't apply to me. I can work at 7 o'clock on an evening. I can work a weekend. I tell my team, I say to my team, you finish work at 5 o'clock, and then I'm sending them Slack messages at 7 p.m. Right? The way in which you behave as a leader is implicitly the permission you're giving your team to do and the expectation you're setting. So it doesn't matter how many times you say to them, I'm working at 7, you don't have to. They're just reading it as the expectation is that I have to work at 7. So this particular one, I think if you don't model it, nobody else will do it. So set those boundaries, respect them, enforce them, remind people that they should be disconnecting from work. An interesting caveat here is some people work better outside of those standard work hours. And so this isn't necessarily everybody should start work at 9 and finish at 5, but is somebody working more hours in total than they should be doing? Is somebody's pattern changing? Is it changing because there's a deadline coming up? Like just being aware of that kind of stuff. So this is one of my favorites. Promotion paradox, rewarding crisis over consistency. I have seen this happen so many times. Google is terrible with this. One of Google's promotion criteria is that you must write something that more engineers use than something else that already exists. Okay, think about it for a minute. What incentive have you just created? You just created a proliferation of little bits of software that everybody's using. You just fragmented the code base. Comes from a good place of trying to encourage, internal code usage, but ends up fragmenting everything. There's another place I've seen this, and it's a little bit insidious, is I joined a company, and I won't say which one it is, and one of the first things they said when I joined was, I don't understand why, but we have heroes in our company. We have a hero complex. There's certain people who the teams are not succeeding, and these people fly in and rescue it. And I don't understand why the team is failing, and I don't understand why these people have to feel like they have to fly in and rescue things. What's going on here? And then literally later that week in the Friday all hands, the boss brings somebody into the all hands, puts his hand around his shoulder and goes, "Chris, you saved this project. This project was dying and you came in and rescued it. Good job, Chris." Even if you say to people, this is what we value, they will look at your behavior and they will look at the things you're doing and the things that you are rewarding implicitly. Being told good job for doing this thing is implicit recognition. And so a really bad management habit is doing that. Because what it says to people is we value the heroes. Again, it doesn't matter what you actually say, it matters what you do. So this is another one of those things where I think helping engineers build out impact portfolios is my tip here. So just like those impact reviews I said on a end of sprint, start documenting those. What impacts has people made? How have people improved things? These are a great way to kind of start shifting that behavior, and don't reward the heroes. If you reward the heroes, all you will get is more heroes. Kind of related to that is top performers. Has anybody got somebody in their team that just always seems to get the really tricky problems because they're really good at solving the tricky problems? How many of you are that person? Yeah. There's so many bad things about this. So many. That person's going to get burnt out, obviously, because they've got so much extra work that they're doing. They're getting all of the really complicated work, and they might be enjoying it, but it just starts loading up again and again and again. But you also end up where the people who aren't getting that work feel left out. So it's this vicious cycle of you're overloading and burning out the people who are doing the work, underloading and disproportionately devaluing the people who aren't, and so both of them quit. You end up with burnout on one side and underrepresentation on the other. So one of the ways I like to solve this one is looking at if you use story points, which there's upsides and downsides of story points, if you are using them, you can use that to kind of look at what the average allocation is for a particular engineer and go, is this person getting disproportionately large? Or if you use t-shirt sizing, for example, are we giving this particular person really big pieces of work all the time? Or you know what, just ask people. Is there somebody in your team you think is getting all the really complicated work? Is the things that you think you should be doing? It's amazing how many times just having a conversation with people helps. Has anybody seen this kind of stuff? Yeah? Yeah, happens all the time. So especially as leaders, I've fallen foul of involving myself in every decision. The company I was telling the story about in the beginning, another reason I was burnt out for that company is when we started hiring people and increasing the team size, I fell foul of this. So I was hired as one of two software engineers in the beginning. We rebuilt the system, the platform from scratch, and then realized as we were scaling we needed more engineers. So my role became less coding, more leading. But as we took on more and more engineers, I still knew the code base intimately because I'd written every single line of it. And so when somebody joined and a piece of work came in and it was add this particular functionality to this particular part of the system, I would go, okay, cool, I know exactly what class to make that change in. I know exactly what function in that class, and I know exactly what line of code in that function in that class to make that change. And so my delivery of piece of work would be, okay, Joan, make this change, make it here, change that to that, see you later. Worked great with one engineer. By the time I had 7 engineers reporting into me, my entire job became defining to that level exactly what everybody was doing. And it got so bad that I literally, it became my entire job. And I couldn't even have a lunch break. One of my engineers built me a paper hat. And on the paper hat, it said, Andrew is on lunch, go away. And I would wear that paper hat when I had my lunch so that nobody would bother me. At 23 years old, that was an appropriate solution to the problem. At 39 years old, that is not an appropriate solution to the problem. Because to me, the problem was I didn't have a lunch break. The problem wasn't I was causing this problem. Looking back on it with 15 years of experience, I can see that what I was doing was I was disempowering the team. I wasn't enabling them to learn and grow and experiment with the code base. So if you're stepping into leadership, this is a big problem, a really easy mistake to make. Because we feel like often as engineers we're valued on what we know. We do this in our interviews. If you look at a job spec, must have 7 years of Swift UI. It's like, cool, okay. Maybe somebody sat over there might have 7 years of Swift UI, but probably not anybody else. So we put this out there when we do job adverts, we do it in the interview process, and so we're led to this assumption that what we know is the value we add. And this becomes a problem when you step into leadership. Ooh, on call. Who's on call? Is anybody on call right now? Yeah, maybe, shrug. So if we see Vaz having a drink later, we know he's not on call. I think there's a problem in on call, which is we don't value the cognitive burden that being on call gives you. And we don't think about that as work. So it's, okay, you work for your 37 and a half hours, and then you're not working on an evening unless you get called in. But there's still cognitive load. There's still something you're thinking about in the back of your mind when you're on call. And we don't value that in any way. And so, if you're in a situation where you're doing really complex, hard work from 9 to 5, and you're on call from 5 to 9, it's incredibly draining. Because you don't get time to unwind, you don't get time to forget about work, because you've always got this little background thread in your mind that I'm on call right now, and I could, the prod could break at any moment. So one of my suggestions here, or 2 suggestions I've got, is think about that when you're planning your work. Whoever is on call, maybe give them lighter cognitive work during the time when they're on call. So if they're on call on an evening, maybe give them something that's a bit easier to do during the day, just to lighten that cognitive load. Another one is alert fatigue. Does anybody know what alert fatigue is? Does anybody want to say what it is? Bok?
It's just when you get spammed by your alert system.
Yeah. So I joined a company and I was put on their PagerDuty roster, and literally every hour was a false positive. You can bet after the first day, I wasn't even really checking it. I just wasn't. Because every single time I checked it was a false positive. So when it did go down, I didn't get to it. And I got a call from my boss who wasn't very happy. So this is alert fatigue. You become blind to the notifications. We get notification blindness. And you get the fatigue of constantly getting pinged, constantly thinking about it, constantly checking. And so, if you've got a situation where you're getting false positives all the time, it is worthwhile investing some of the time into reducing that, because it's not just about the cognitive load of being on call, it's what that carries through into your day-to-day work. So this is, again, one of those little things that feels like it's not important, but it all adds up. Because you have the cognitive load of being on call, you add in the fact you're overloaded because you're a top performer and you just get stuff shoved on you. You add in, the fact that you're working on things that are not really adding value, and these things just start exponentially increasing. Who has a fragile engineering system at work? Nobody wants to put their hand up for that one. A fragile engineering system is one of those ones where you make a change in one place and everything breaks. It's like a pane of glass. You try and chip a little bit off the edge and the whole thing just shatters. These things just add huge cognitive load to when people are thinking about it. If they have to think, how can I make this change without breaking everything, they're going to be less inclined to make changes. They're going to take longer to make changes, and people just don't want to work on your software system. People, engineers, we like to work on things that are easy to work on. This is why developer experience exists as a concept. We want to make code bases that are easy to use. And if your code base is not easy to use, you're just adding cognitive overload to everything. My suggestion here is whenever I'm looking at a company and I'm doing kind of consultancy for how they can improve their software hygiene and how they build things, a phrase I like to keep coming back to is learning-oriented systems. And what I mean by that sounds a little bit faffy, but what I mean by that is, what are you learning every time you're doing something? How are you building learning into the way you're doing things? And one of these that I'm sure a lot of people are aware of, blameless retrospectives or postmortems. Most people heard that term? What often gets missed out on those, they're amazing things. What often gets missed out of them is they're what happens when it's gone wrong. What about when it almost went wrong, but didn't? They are great learning opportunities as well, because if not for one thing, they would have been an outage. So what was that one thing? What went right? What went wrong? They tend to get just swept under the carpet. Oh, that was a near miss. Let's just forget about that and move on. No. Let's look at that deeply. Let's understand it. Let's see what went wrong, what went right, what can we learn from it. And so thinking about the things you're doing in this learning-oriented system way is a great way of doing that. One that I saw in a large 3-letter acronymed bank. Australia has a lot of large 3-letter acronym banks.
What letter does it start with?
Was they just had this culture of not thinking beyond the next quarter, the next everything. That applies to all of the feeling. Yeah, you're probably right. The one I was working at, though, was especially bad. When you don't invest in your people, when you don't invest in thinking about it, you're treating people like they're fungible. Engineers are not fungible. What I mean by that is, if I've got a $5 note, doesn't matter if I have that $5 note or that $5 note, it's still going to buy me $5 worth of stuff. Every single engineer in this room has something different to give, has something that is unique about them, an experience that is different, something valuable. It could be a technical skill set that they've got. It could be a life experience they have. It could be a way of seeing the world. And if you don't have that way of thinking about engineering, and you see every single one of them as fungible, you forget about developing those people and keeping them in your company. And so they leave. I was speaking to somebody who was running a consultancy yesterday. I think it was yesterday. I've got a 4-month-old at home. Time is a concept that I don't understand right now. It could have been 2 months ago, but it feels like yesterday. And we were talking about how he's got a bunch of attrition in his company right now. People are just quitting. And I said to him, okay, well, you know, what are you doing for team development? I was like, what do you mean? I was like, well, okay, cool, that's a good start to this conversation. Do you have any budgets for learning and development? Do you take people out for a meal every so often? Like, what are you doing to kind of do stuff? I just pay them really well. Okay, so you've got a long way to go with this conversation. To shortcut the conversation I had with him, if you only give people salary as a way to value themselves, they will only value themselves with the salary. If you give them one lever, they're going to pull that lever. If you allow people to feel that they're valued in ways that are other than just getting more money, then they're going to want to work with you. They're going to, you know, build the interesting things. I have had so many jobs where I haven't been paid market rate, but I have loved working there because the team has been great. The software we've been working on is fun. What we're building, why we're building it was great. The location was good. Everything was good about it, and the money was you know, not as important for me. And so, you know, here, if we're not developing our team, you end up with people who only see their value as the salary, and they will quit because somebody will always offer them more money. There's always somebody with a bigger checkbook than you. Cool. There's always somebody with a bigger checkbook than you. This is my favorite one. Meeting vampirism. Who looks at their calendar and it looks like a scene from Tetris? Yeah. There's so much research out there that shows you what this overload of moving from meeting to meeting to meeting gives us. We know this, we talk about this as an industry. We've got some really great tools nowadays where we can solve some of these problems. Say what you will about AI, it can help in these places. Transcription has got a lot better. Word error rates are now down in the kind of single digits, which is better than humans. If you've got good quality audio, automated transcription is now better than human transcription. Fact, it just is. If you have crappy audio, there's room to move there. Humans are very, very good at picking up bad audio, picking up speech in bad audio. Computers not so much. But if you've got really good audio, computers smash humans out of the park. So those meetings that are basically just people talking about what they did, they don't need to be meetings. They can be status updates. If you want to just talk to the camera and record it and post it in Slack, I do that all the time. I've got a team I work with, and whenever there's something that I found fun or interesting, or I've got a status update, or I want to share something, rather than getting people synchronously in Zoom, I just record a video and post it on Discord.
Just a question on that. I find that the people who join those meetings are the ones who love to give those updates.
Yeah.
The people that want the transcript tend to be the ones that don't want to give the updates. How do you balance it?
Yeah, and there's an interesting kind of follow-on from that, which is there are non-transactional benefits from those kinds of meetings as well. The kind of the human building of relationships that happen in those meetings. So I think, you know, the ones where they're doing it purely because it's their chosen way to communicate and they're not thinking about that kind of human interaction factor, it's showing them the research. It's trying to influence them, encourage them that what they're doing actually is harming what they're trying to do. Then to the follow-on one of you know, we are potentially losing some of this human interaction side of things. That can be outside of that. I think trying to solve both of those in one meeting is a mistake. Let's solve the status updates in one and the interhuman interactions in another, and kind of, you know, have them thought about as two separate problems. Another related one is I was working with a company on migrating from one platform to another platform, and they were migrating hundreds of microsites. And there was a meeting I would have every week where the executives would ask, how are we doing? How are we going? How many have migrated? How many is this? Blah, 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 blah. I just created a dashboard. It was a static HTML page, but it was a dashboard. And I just updated it, you know, half an hour before the meeting. That meeting went from an hour to 5 minutes. So if we think about that thing of like, how do we get the information in asynchronous ways, we can choose to be conscious with our synchronous time, as opposed to defaulting to synchronicity. So those are my 9 habits: equating business with value, failing to set, respect, and model healthy boundaries, promotion paradox, overloading top performers, involving yourself on call, fragile engineering systems, neglecting team development, and meeting vampirism. Again, every single one of these is small, but it's the cumulative effects that really cause the problems. If I went to your company and I saw you doing one of these, I'd be like, yeah, okay, sure. If I saw you doing 5, 6, 7 of them, that's a huge problem. They all add up. Thank you very much. If you want to grab the slide deck, that's the first QR code there. If you want to follow me on LinkedIn, that's the QR code that my face is under. I do a lot of live streams and talks on LinkedIn about these kinds of topics. I've had people like Scott Hanselman, Michael Lopp, charity majors, talking about all things to do engineering leadership and teams. If you want to know more about what you can pay me dollars to do, that's what the middle link is.
And he does advertise all of the live streams and stuff on our Slack normally as well.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
In the random channel, I think, from memory.
No,
there's a leadership channel, isn't there?
I do it in team leadership, which really should be renamed Andrew, because I'm pretty much the only person that posts in there. I feel guilty every time I post. Any questions before we wrap up? Yep, one question.
Thank you for the talk. I would say the main audience is managers, but the vast majority of us here are engineers. So, for engineers, any advice how to manage up removing these habits from your managers?
So this talk is getting recorded. So send them a link to this talk. This is actually based off a blog post that I did, which you can share with them if you want as well, which is linked to on that. So I did a blog post, no internet because I didn't connect. Yeah, but I mean that's the first thing. Like obviously, just talking about this, engaging, discussing it is useful. Highlighting to them, often people don't see it because you're not closing the feedback loop for them. And what I mean by that is, whenever one of these things happens, you just work harder as an engineer and you just suck it all up and you just break your back to do it all, the leader's just going to go, cool, it worked, I'll do it again. So I do want to encourage you sometimes to just like not always break your back. Right? There are times when we have to work hard, when we have to really hit those deadlines, sure. But if they're every month, we need to push back. Cool. Anybody else?
Thanks, Andrew. One thing that popped in my head when I saw your 8 advices is you never mentioned the first thing that comes to mind when new managers come is lead by example.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about?
Yeah. I mentioned it briefly, but I'll go into it a little bit more. You know, one of these things we often forget, is, if you're a leader, is that you know the way that we show ourselves is the implicit permission we give to other people. And so, you know, if we do something, that's what we're showing is the expected behavior. And so, really important, if you have a leadership position, you've got to live by these principles, because nobody else will listen to your words, they'll only listen to your actions. Do as I say, not as I do does not work with kids, and because it doesn't work with humans in general. Cool.
We're going to wrap it up, right? So
Yeah.
I think I'm going to set a boundary. And so we just give time to Renaud. Thank you very much, Andrew. Do you want to come up? Oh, I should.
It's going to be tough to follow up these two amazing talks. I mean, two amazing speakers. I really enjoyed it. Hi, I'm Renaud. I'm here to kind of change a bit, do something a bit lighter, I guess. And I'm going to talk about the grid. And obviously by the grid, I mean Tron's grid. No, this grid. We all know which grid I'm going to talk about. So it's not going to be about software development, about iOS, about Apple platforms. Why am I giving this talk really? Well, it's because for the past 5 years, since COVID really, I've gotten pretty passionate about what we call the energy transition. Before that, I really didn't care about that, right? I just paid my electricity bills, I turned on the lights, I didn't care where it was coming from, I just cared that it came in and I just used it. But I didn't really understand really how things worked or whether it mattered or how things would change. I've gotten pretty tired, like most of you, I'm sure, of the political soundbites and the lack of concrete data. I love data. I love being shown the past, the present, the future, and I feel that in the media nowadays we lack that. We just learn about net zero and some targets, but we don't explain to people where we are and where we are going. And yeah, that's kind of why I'm giving that talk. Also, my wife can't take it anymore. I mean, I'm like talking to her and she's nodding, but she's not listening to me. So I figured the CocoaHeads audience would be a good audience for that, because you guys are curious minds and probably interested in that kind of topic and, expand your horizons. Some disclaimers before I really get into it. I am obviously not a great engineer, so I will definitely oversimplify a lot. And I might be mistaken. I mean, there's only so much I can learn by myself without making some mistakes. So please feel free to correct me if I'm mistaken, but this is not my job, and I'm trying to learn from whatever resources I have at my disposition. I am fiercely pro-renewables. Maybe some of my slides will come out as like, oh, I'm against it. No, I'm definitely pro-renewables, but obviously renewables comes with a set of challenges, and we have to be realistic about it. So don't misunderstand me. I'm also very happy to share my knowledge of solar systems. I mean, that's what I'm geeking about these days. I've got a solar setup at home. I just got a battery. It's amazing. So if you're thinking about putting a solar system on your home or your apartment or whatever, please talk to me. I'm really happy to talk about it. This is awesome. Anyway, let's start. So first of all, let's have an appreciation for electricity, really. And electromagnetism as a general thing, really, because that's what it is about. But this is a reason, really, why we live in an amazing city and we don't live like this, right? This is what living in cities used to be like a century ago, where you had smokestacks everywhere, burning coal right in the middle of the city, and there would be smog, it would be awful, and people would die. And that is actually, some photos are just like paintings, but you can see it, right? These are actual pictures taken then. This was the life before we actually mastered electricity and made it work for us in a way that's amazing. The fact that there's this force of nature that we can harvest, transport, and use in a clean way is just fantastic. I mean, if it didn't exist, we couldn't have the life we have. So appreciation for electricity in the first place. But let's define what is a grid. I mean, you've heard the term and probably you have some idea of what it is, but let's define it together, shall we? So a grid could be said that it's an interconnected set of electrical equipment, right? It's really literally the power lines that you see outside, the power outlets you have here, the power plants. Everything in an electrical grid is connected together from the power plant all the way to the power outlet that I see right here. Everything is connected, everything is running together. It is obviously running with alternating current, right? We're pretty familiar with that from high school electrical things. With a set frequency, usually 50 or 60 hertz. In Australia, it's 50 hertz. And the thing that's amazing about that is that if you think about it, there's obviously a current that's alternating. That current is exactly the same everywhere in the grid at any point in time. I mean, plus or minus the speed of light, but let's imagine it's not significant in that case. So the actual voltage that you see outside of that power outlet right here is going to be exactly at the same time, the same voltage you see all the way, let's say in Cairns, all the way in Queensland, because that's how the grid works. Everything is completely synchronized together everywhere that is connected with. Which is a pretty mind-blowing thing to just think about. There's obviously with electricity, we need to have a perfectly balanced supply and demand. That's really actually important and actually problematic, right? There's no way electrons can just bunch up waiting to be consumed. They arrive, they need to be consumed. If they don't, bad things and very bad things happen. And I want to paraphrase one of my favorite YouTuber that I recommend highly, which is called Technology Connections. But he had this quote lately that said, "The grid is the biggest, most complex, continuously running machine humans have ever built. It is on a scale unlike any other, and it is probably more complex than the space shuttle or anything we have ever done. And we don't even think about it because we just turn on the lights, we just boil our water, and we just assume that it just happens. And yes, it should just happen, but again, it's an appreciation towards the fact that we have built this thing and we need to care about it, right? So, and also we are not, I think it's another quote that I didn't put in, but we are basically like 2 days away from complete societal collapse, right? If ever the grid collapses and we don't have electricity, everybody says like, you just need 48 hours for society to collapse. So it's really important that we get power everywhere. I don't want to be a bit gloomy, but it's really important. So lots of very smart people, important people work on it to make sure that the grid works. Let's talk about some famous grids, right? So in the United States, for example, there's 3 main grids. There's a western grid, the eastern grid. So in the middle of the country, there are literally no connections, right? The power lines stop, and then you go to another grid. And obviously there's Texas that does things their own way because they didn't want to be part. I mean, there's political reasons for that, but also like that was a big problem a few years ago when they had that big cold snap, and they didn't have enough power to power everything, right? And they couldn't be helped by the rest of the country because they were not connected to the rest of the country. So they had to deal with whatever problems they had and could not receive power from the rest of the country. So yeah, that's United States, for example. Europe looks like this. There's a few grids, the main one being the continental Europe, as you would say, right? France, Spain, Germany, all of that. And interestingly, just recently, like a year or 2 ago, I believe Ukraine actually connected to the European grid. So it disconnected from the Russian grid, and now you could consider Ukraine being part of that blue thing. So yeah, pretty big in scale, as you can see, right? Another one that's pretty famous for anybody that's been in Japan is a Japanese grid, which is really interesting, where the north of the country runs at 50 hertz, the south of the country runs at 60 hertz, and in the middle, depending on where you are, it depends. But yeah, we have 2 separate grids, which is bananas, but that's how they've always done, and that's the reasons are historical. I'm not going to get into it, but yeah, like if you go to Japan, you will see in the hotel some warnings about make sure that you know what you're plugging into the outlet, because you need to make sure that it accepts the frequency. The country doesn't decide that, it's where you are in the country. And I'm going to include that picture that's amazing that I've seen recently about a timer, a cooking timer in Japan, where you have to basically change how much you turn the little handle depending on which frequency you are on, because a lot of appliances, right, because the grid runs at 50 or 60 Hertz, a lot of appliances use pulses of voltage as a source of time. They don't have any crystal or anything in there. They want to save money, right? So what they do is they just count the pulses of things, and therefore the time will run faster for them depending on if you're on a 50 Hertz or a 60 Hertz system. So that's just an amazing picture telling you how most of your appliances to this day work, right? Like they just count the pulses on the grid to count time, to figure out time. And then famous grid is ours, which is mostly going to be what I'm centering about for the rest of the talk, right? The Australian grid. And what I'm going to talk about is the Eastern grid, where we have Queensland, New South Wales, South Australia, Victoria, and Tasmania connected together. West Australia is not connected with us because they're so far away, they have their own grid. I mean, there's no point in having a power line going all the way there. That makes sense. But yes, we are actually on the same grid as Tasmania. There is a power line going between us and Tasmania. It's a DC power line going down the Bass Strait, running 300 megawatts of power continuously. If somebody knows, I'd be really interested to know if Tasmania has the same phase as us, because the link is DC. So theoretically, they can run with a different phase, but I could not find the thing. Anyways, if anybody knows, I'd be really interested to know. So yeah, let's do a surprise quiz, because who doesn't like that? So I just want to quiz you about electrical literacy, see what kind of room I have. So if anybody knows the answer or thinks they know the answer, please let me know and I'll move on. So let's say, how much power thereabouts does a kettle use when you boil water? 2 kilowatts. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, I would say 1800 watts, but 2 kilowatts is pretty good. Yeah, that's a kettle. How much energy does a typical Australian household use per day?
20 kilowatt hours?
Yeah, it's pretty good estimate. I would say 30 kilowatts per hour, depending on the winter, summer, depending on the season. But yeah, I just want to introduce you to kind of units, right? We know the unit of power, which is a watt, and there's this notion of energy, which is stored, which is a quantity, right? So it's usually measured in watt hour, kilowatt hour, megawatt hour things, but the same way you have kilometers per second, and if you drive 50 kilometers per hour for an hour, you will have done 50 kilometers. If you consume 1 kilowatt of power for an hour, you will have consumed 1 kilowatt hour, right? So that's how these units work. What is a fair price for a kilowatt hour of energy in Australia right now? 25 cents, yeah, that's pretty good, yeah. 20 cents, I would say, I would say that's correct. Again, these are just estimates, right? So it's pretty good. What is the main kind of power plant in a NEM? So the NEM is a name for that Eastern Australian grid. Sorry, I didn't introduce the acronym before, but yeah, what is the main? Coal? Exactly, yeah, it's coal. So you guys are pretty good about that. But so you're already pretty aware of the situation. And one last one. What is the current share of renewables in a NEM? Where are we at right now? 30. Anybody has a better number? We're exactly at 41.7%. And that's the thing that surprised a lot of people, right? They think that we are so far away from reaching, some kind of goal or whatever. Now we are already at 41.7%. We are doing so well. The bad news is this was the easy 40%. The next 40% are going to be way harder to achieve. But still, this is 41.7% of the grid that is not burning coal. And that's amazing, right? We already achieved that. And we can clap our hands and we can be positive about it. And that's my frustration about the fact that why is nobody talking about that? Let's talk about our achievements and then also the future. But we need to think about where we are. And it's pretty darn good. So let's talk once again about the Australian market precisely. So how is the price of electricity decided? So let's talk about the NEM market, right? So how is the wholesale price of electricity decided, because you as a customer have a fixed price that you pay to a retailer, usually, like you said, 20, 25 cents per kilowatt hour. But there's another market between the retailers and the generators that is completely variable. So that market is, first of all, regulated and operated by what's called the AEMO. AEMO, I don't know how to say it out loud, but let's go with AEMO. Australian Electricity Market Operator, I believe what it means, but that's the entity that controls all of that, right? That will decide the price for everybody. The market has been privatized since the end of the 90s. So apparently before that, I was not here in Australia, but the market was public. It was privatized because competition is supposed to bring the prices down. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. It's up to you to figure that out. But and like I said, yeah, you customers, you pay a fixed price. You're locked in a contract. You don't have to worry about the wholesale price. But the wholesale price obviously will impact your next contract. So you have to care kind of about the wholesale price. And the wholesale price is set basically every 30 minutes. It's set in tranches of 30 minutes. And there's a bidding auction going on between all the generators that want to provide and sell energy and the AEMO. So let's see how that works. Let's say we have a demand that is forecast by the AEMO, right? Like we forecast the demand for the next 30 minutes. And the forecast demand is 20 gigawatts to power the whole of Australian eastern border for the next 30 minutes. And we have a bunch of generators that are basically performing bids. And some of them are going to be, like a lot of it is going to be coal, let's say, that has a capacity of 12 gigawatt that says, okay, for every kilowatt hour I provide, I want to be paid 30 cents. Wind is cheaper because turbines, there's wind, they can basically run. But, like there's wear and tear. So they're saying, like, I want to be paid 10 cents for me to be worth running my wind turbine. Hydro says, I want to be paid 50 cents because otherwise I would rather keep my water. Solar is super cheap because it says, I got sun right now. I mean, literally there's no wear and tear. I can sell it super cheap, 5 cents, why not? And then there's another participant that's called, I would call distillate. Distillate basically is a term for fuel, like literal petrol and mazout and diesel. There's actual generators on the grid that burn the stuff that you buy and put in your car. And these are super pricey because they're like, petrol is pricey, right? So like we can provide power. We can literally spin up a bunch of like really dirty, costly generators, but you got to pay us $15 for every kilowatt hour I generate. Outrageous prices, but yeah, they can do that. It's a bidding auction. So obviously first, we go through the cheapest bidder. First of all, solar gets to satisfy some of the demand. Wind gets it. Then after that, hydro. Then after that, coal. And guess what? We have satisfied the demand. There's no, all the other bids that are over that last bid didn't get to participate and they can't turn on. They can't provide any electricity to the network. And the final price for that is going to be 30 cents per kilowatt hour. And that's really peculiar because the price that is paid to every single generator at this point is whatever the highest price has been bid. So even if you bid 5 cents, let's say for the solar farm, if somebody bid higher in that tranche, you will get 30 cents. It's really odd. I actually don't understand why. I'm not an economist, but why is everybody getting the highest price? There's probably a reason for it, but it's weird. But that's basically going to make sense when we go to the next example where now demand has become 24 gigawatts, let's say, for the next 30 minutes. And again, solar gets the first bit, then wind, then hydro, then coal. But we're not there yet. I don't know, we can make calculation. We're still not there yet. So now distillate is getting to generate, and it can generate 1 kilowatt, it can generate 1 megawatt, it can generate 1 gigawatt. It doesn't matter. It is the highest bidder, it sets the price, and now the price that everyone gets paid is $15 per kilowatt hour. It is outrageous. And that is how wholesale prices work. And that is why when the demand is really high, if you look at the wholesale price, which you can find online, the prices go way up high. And that's because these few generators that use petrol to generate power determine the price for everyone. And we go from something costing, let's say, 20 cents per kilowatt hour to, I think there's an upper limit at $20 per kilowatt hour. So it's 2 orders of magnitude more. And these events, these moments when the grid has a high demand and distillate has to be burned, is basically what makes most of the price over the year, because it happens only a few times per year, but that is a huge increase for just a few hours during the year. It's bananas, but yeah, that's how the bidding works. This is obviously hyper simplified. The reality is way more complex, right? This is a Victoria power distribution network. You can imagine that there's changes depending on which power line you're behind, because there's going to be capacity restrictions behind every power line, where you are, where the demand is. The bidding system is way more complex, and actually the way it is done is through a set of constraints. Like if you're familiar with auto layout, you know about constraints and constraint solvers. That is exactly that. There is a giant constraint algorithm running where every power line is represented as a constraint, every generator is represented as a constraint, every demand, and they run a giant constraint solving algorithm, and out of that comes out who generates what power depending on all of these things. It's pretty amazing. I mean, I don't know the details, but that's how it works. All right, so another point, obviously, like I said, is balancing supply and demand. Once again, supply and demand needs to be very, very balanced. How do we balance the supply and demand? Because obviously over 30 minutes, things will change, right? It will not stay flat at 30 minutes. First of all, the forecast might be wrong, but also things will shift over 30 minutes. The way to measure supply and demand is by looking at the frequency, right? So I said we are at 50 hertz. But if there is an over demand, that frequency will start to drop. And that's how everybody detects that, okay, we need to generate more. And likewise, if there's an oversupply, the frequency will start to ramp up once again. That is how everything is monitored. I can literally put, if I had one, I could put an oscilloscope in that PowerPoint right here and tell you the balance of supply and demand on the grid right now. If I just looked at the frequency that I could see on a sinusoidal wave, it's pretty amazing. That frequency must remain between 49.85 hertz and 50.15 hertz. So it's a 0.3% tolerance, right? It's very tight. It's 50 hertz is a very strong guarantee. If there's at any time the frequency goes over these limits, it's considered a grave incident. There's going to be an investigation, and there's going to be remediation, because we don't want that to happen. Usually when that happens, nothing bad happens, but something bad could happen. So we want to rectify that. There's a side market, let's just quickly over that. That is just for frequency control, right? So you don't necessarily bid for that production, but you're just there to just correct frequency. So there's side markets, right? Not just a 30-minute bidding market, there's more. Let's talk about renewables now. Let's get into some pretty data, because we love data. Here's the first graph. We love graphs. This is a typical day in an M. So I don't know if you guys have ever saw one of these graphs. This is the share of generation in M over a winter day. I took that graph a few days ago. Probably a pretty sunny day, actually, pretty nice day. So you can see yellow is, the light yellow is distributed PV. Basically, it's the solar systems on people's rooftops. And you can see it's pretty big these days. It is a fair, and we are in winter. Imagine that in the summer. It's getting big. It's becoming a juggernaut. It's becoming a monster. The darker yellow is just the solar farms. So basically, like, the solar farms you can see actually deployed. Green is wind. Then blue is hydro, right? All the power plants with the dams and all that. Black and brown is coal. So you can see there's still a lot of coal we're burning. And the reason why this graph goes below zero in the middle of the day is that we actually now we have batteries, right? And batteries charge during the day. So that's why it goes below zero. That's how it works in that case. And that dark blue edge in the morning and in the evening, that's a battery share that we have right now, where the batteries tend to charge during the day because there's plenty of power, plenty of sun, and they discharge in the morning and in the evening to help that demand that's really like bumpy. Something that's missing that I'm just like penciling in here is there's supposed to be more. See, right, like that curve is very predictable, it's very smooth, but certainly like it dips and all that. So what's going on here? that red line should really be the actual demand, because what's happening is that a lot of people, because they have rooftop solar, don't export to the grid, right? Like that light yellow thing is just an estimate, but there's a lot of electricity produced by rooftop solar that never makes it to the grid. They're just consumed by houses. And that's what this missing area is. It's just things that people consume directly from their home, never makes it to the grid. So it's just interesting to see that there should be something here, but it disappears because it's already consumed by the houses. Anyway, so we see this graph and we say, okay, well, we're doing pretty well. So why don't we just build more? Build more solar farms, build more wind farms and all that, and then we'll be done, right? Like, just build more. Well, there's a few problems. First of all, the first problem, I'm not going to do too much over that because obviously we're not here for that, but it's political, right? There's special interests, there's misinformation, and there's not in my backyardism, if you don't know the term. But I won't go too much into that, but I will say that at least I believe that there is a cost to, for example, changing our landscape, right? If we change the coastline to have, let's say, wind farms everywhere that we can see from the coastline, we have forever changed that coastline. So I understand sometimes people having reluctance to having, at the very least, windmills in their neighborhood. We are changing nature profoundly when we install those. So preferably we install those in a way where we don't see them in the first place. Problem number two is obviously viability. So it ain't sunny all the time. I mean, look outside, not much sun right now, I would say. And it ain't windy all the time. So I think we're all pretty familiar with this problem. So what solutions do we have for that? Well, another obvious one is like we store the energy when it's sunny and windy, and we store it for when it's not sunny and not windy. So again, batteries, for example, that we just saw, is a great solution. They're going to be here. They're going to be able to store these electrons and then push them back once the sun goes to sleep. Okay. Oof. And another great solution would be offshore wind. So here's a map of Victoria. You can see that it's windy, kind of like a bit windy inside inland, but you can see the Bass Strait is really windy. Offshore wind is going to be a great base load generation of wind. It's going to be, we have a lot of land in Australia. We have built a lot of wind farms inside Australia, but we are starting to build wind farms offshore because of that reason. Problem number three is distribution. I'm going to go back to that map. You can see it's very complex. And yeah, so one of the solutions is that we are building all of these solar farms and all of that where the power plants are, so that we can reuse the same power lines, but we still need to build more power lines. There's only so much we can do with existing power lines. So a lot of the cost is not about the solar farms and wind farms and all that per se, it's about the distribution and the power lines. Problem number four is economical. I'm going to go back to that slide, and then I'm going to remove solar because solar cannot be controlled, right? It's when it's sun. And then, can you see something in that graph? I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? We all see it. It's a duck. Of course, it's a duck. Actually, no, it's called a duck curve. It's the actual term for it. It's a duck curve, and it's a problem that is created by solar panels where the demand dips so much during the day nowadays, right? You can see over the years how much it dips and dips as people install rooftop solar or the solar farms coming on, that there's this curve that is dipping, and it's a huge problem because first of all, yeah, prices during the day now can go negative. Like the wholesale price of electricity can go negative. So yeah, awesome. We actually get paid to consume solar. Isn't that awesome? I mean, how? Why? Why is it who's paying the money in the first place? The problem is that the coal generators don't want to shut down, right? They have to stay powered on because for them, shutting down and shutting on the boilers is hugely problematic. So they are willing to pay money to stay and to basically compete against solar to stay connected so that they don't have to shut down. I don't know the reason exactly why, I just know they do. So the coal generators are paying people to consume electricity because they don't want to shut down. Problem is that also, so the main problem is that it disincentivizes investors, right? The name is a private market. If you have negative prices, but nobody wants to invest and generate this electricity in the first place, there's whiplash of prices, and generators will make it back in the evening anyway. So whatever you make during the day the prices will go way up in the evening anyway, unless you have some leverage like a battery or anything like that, but really like you're not getting much out of it as a customer. The answer is kind of overall, but the answer is more storage, more competition, and maybe even public subsidies, right? Like make sure that we make that transition and we help the market, because we cannot afford to let the market just figure it out by itself. Now, problem number 5, my favorite, is a 85% ceiling problem. So let's talk about inertia. So what is inertia? This is a turbine inside a power plant. This thing, as you may know, is like a gigantic spinning thing that spins at 3,000 RPM, right? Because we are running at 50 hertz. That thing needs to spin at 3,000 RPM. This is tens of tons, if not hundreds of tons. And this has literal inertia, mechanical inertia, angular momentum, as you would say it. This is really important because inertia is what provides an instantaneous response to supply and demand imbalances, right? So as there is an increased demand on the electrical network, that spinning giant turbine will actually instantly, continuously start slowing down, but also shed some energy toward generating more thing. And likewise, when the demand is, the supply is too big, that turbine will start spinning up and picking up that demand as well. It is really important. So it protects. It's very important to protect against unexpected events, like a power plant somewhere trips or a smelter trips or something like that. We need that inertia so that the grid continues operating at the same frequency. And if we don't have inertia, things can go really wrong. Renewable generators, the inverters, and the electronic equipment, they don't provide any inertia. There's no spinning thing inside a solar farm. So that's a huge problem. They generate power, but they don't have any inertia. And the MO requires a 15% floor on inertia. I'm not going to go through the units and all of that. It's complex. But anything less than that is too risky. We could run at 100% renewables nowadays. We could say, like, let it rip. Let's just have the solar farms power everything during the summer days. But if there's anything that goes wrong, we have a complete blackout. So we cannot do that right now, right? So what are the solutions to that problem? This. And you're going to say, like, that looks like a turbine. So what's the difference? Like, no, it's not a turbine. This is just like a flywheel. So what if we have a turbine, but without the power plant bit? What if we just have a giant flywheel that we call actually synchronous condensers, and all they do is they spin? Like, there's no generation. They just spin, and they just respond to these supply and demand imbalances. So anyway, we're building a lot of those nowadays everywhere in the world. Also, fast response batteries are good. Batteries are really good at responding to against imbalances to the millisecond, right? But millisecond is still not good enough, but still a battery is better than a coal boiler that takes a few minutes to actually ramp up. Gas generators are actually really good as well because gas can be turned on and off really quickly. That's why they say firm by gas, right? Renewables firm by gas. You can hear that term often in media. And then there's also this new technology called grid forming inverters. I'm not going to go too much into them. Anyway, I'm going to rush. Final graph. This is where we are. This is where we need to be in 2030 to reach our targets. So you can see we had nothing. I think this graph starts in 2010. We had nothing in 2010. We have a lot now, but there's still so much more to go. And these are kind of the productions that we have. So it's pretty good, but you can see how much there is still to go. So 41% is great, but there is a lot still to cover. And there's more demand as time goes on. And so this is what we need. Some cool websites, if you're interested, there's some blogs and some news sites that talk about these things in more details. Renew Economy is great, Watt Clarity, Namlog. Some cool videos that if you're a geek, you will enjoy that, right? There's this playlist on YouTube from that guy that works on, a few years ago he did that. He worked on a little dam turbine that produces 50 kilowatts of energy, I think, and he's maintaining it, renovating it, turning it off and on, and he's showing everything inside it, including the moment when he turns it on and connects it to the grid, and he's like, I can't screw it up, because if I screw it up, the whole thing will tear itself apart. So I recommend seeing his videos because he shows a facet of engineering that I found fascinating. There's another video which is a British, called the British Grid Kettle Response, which is a famous video from 15 years ago where there's a grid engineer that is watching the TV because he's waiting for the EastEnders which is a TV show famous in Britain, you might be familiar with, to finish, because he knows that when the EastEnders finish, half of Britain is going to start making tea and turning on their kettles. And he's like, I'm going to fire up gigawatts of power right now. When the EastEnders theme starts running, I'm going to, and anyway, so it's amazing because it's one guy in a control room where he has access to the whole grid. And he's like, kettles are going on. I need to fire up like all of these generators everywhere. Otherwise, the whole thing comes down. It's amazing. There's also an interesting Wikipedia and kind of like related stories. The 1965 US blackout, where I recommend you listening to the radio recording when that happens, because before there was a blackout for that moment, they're playing music and the music slows down because the turntable functions with the frequency of the grid, and suddenly like it turns a bit slower and the DJ notices like, hey, like, you know, like, oh, we're playing the song a bit slower nowadays. It doesn't have any idea that the grid is failing, like it's running at 45 hertz or whatever, but he's like, oh, well, for some reason that song is a bit slower these days. Amazing to listen to that recording because they have no idea that a blackout is happening. And then the best website is openelectricity.org.au. That's where I got my graphs. They have so much stuff, and I'm going to quickly just show you. I don't know if you see my, no, you don't see my desktop. So I may not be able to see it because we don't have time anyway. Go and see that website. If I give this talk, it's mostly to get you guys to look at that website. They have all the graphs about where we are, where we're going. They have a list of records. We are breaking records almost every single day in the market. And I love that they have that page that shows that, because it makes you, first of all, it makes me feel good, but it makes us feel like, no, that transition is happening not right now, not later. And we are doing well. We still have so much more to do, but at the very least, we are reaching milestones almost daily. And we are right now in winter, so most of the records we are breaking are mostly about wind generation and battery discharge. When we get into spring and when we get into, oh, there you go. So we have a tracker, let's say you can look at okay, that's you. Well, just look at records, for example, go in the records tab, if you can. There you go. And scroll down, you can see like all the records that the grid has broken. So right now, a lot of bioenergy stuff. But if you go down, you can see all the stuff, all the wind generation, because we're in the winter. And as you go down, you will see lots of battery right now. We are installing so much battery in the grid. I mean, that's the best thing to do right now. And so a lot of records are being broken. And if you go and let's say, yeah, okay. Just look at it. It's amazing to browse. It's going to make you feel good. So yeah, I recommend that website. It's amazing. All right. I'll let you go.
Nice.
Okay. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, yeah, sir.
No, you know what they are.
All right, thank you everyone for coming. Sorry I went a bit over time, lost track of things. Thanks to our speakers, Aaron, Vernon. Thanks, buddy. Is Gavin and Joanna close? Got it? Okay, thank you. And TC, thanks for coming. Andrew Murphy, thank you for speaking. Beautiful stuff. Anyone want to chat with them after, go for it. Reminder of the events, you should have done this last bit. CocoaHeads are doing Coding Night. What's up? Yeah, Coding Night next week, 20th of August. Thank you to our sponsors, Mantle Group and REA Group. Thank you to the audience for attending, and go CocoaHeads. And if you want to come to the social event thing now at the Mitre Tavern, welcome. Great. Go CocoaHeads.